Look, these tariffs were, in all honesty, what I actually did hear was this was the press basically trying to create a coup against Trump. They've tried Signalgate, everything under the sun. And so they thought if they can really blast this out of the water, his supporters will abandon him. I guess Republicans will convert and say, yes, I'm sorry, I should have been a Democrat or something. I don't know. But they just exaggerated everything. I mean, from Bloomberg to say that NASDAQ is in a bear market and you didn't even take out the uptrend line. Come on.
You're watching Capital Cosm. My name is Danny, and today's guest is the legendary Martin Armstrong. Martin, thank you so much for coming back on the show, my friend.
Always a pleasure to see you.
Yeah, likewise. And it couldn't come at better timing. Lots of people are talking about the tariffs, and we, including us, we were just talking about this off camera. But how do you want to kick things off? We had a huge market rally on Wednesday, up to the tune of 12% on the NASDAQ, and precious metals are rallying. Everything is rallying again. But I want to get your thoughts on all this. You were telling me that your computer predicted all this many months ago. So I'll let you take the floor however which way you want. But go ahead. Where do you see these tariffs going? Did Trump backing out and slapping a default 10% tariff and effectively putting a 90-day pause on things, was that a reaction to the falling stock market, or was that all part of like a negotiation plan? How do you see all this, Martin?
No, look, Trump is, he's a businessman. He's not a politician. All right. So he's used to the art of the deal. It's in negotiation. Oh, I want $100. I'll give you 50. Well, okay, let's make it 75. I mean, that's pretty standard. What he did was, like I hear from Canada, a lot of Canadians say, they should really send him a thank you letter. They didn't know that each province acts like an independent country. And they put tariffs on each other.
Really?
So, that would be illegal in the United States. One state can't block the goods of another. Europe is probably the worst of all. And it's mainly the French, which are probably the most hostile to anything. But what we were all taught in school largely was just propaganda from the 30s. If you look at the facts, after World War I, Europe had basically blown its economy out of the water. It was the place where even like sugar production, refining, all that was taking place. All right, so the British pound was the financial center of the world. It was the reserve currency. So they just blew themselves out of the water. So to try and recover, they put on excessively high tariffs after World War I, all before 1929. And sugar production, for example, had fled Europe and went to the Caribbean. So Smoot-Hawley only came out in 1930, about a year after the crash began. All right, so no serious economist that I ever saw blamed the tariffs for the Great Depression. That was all the Democrats during the 1932 election. The fake rhetoric, blaming Smoot-Hawley because there were two Republicans, and the tariffs were really on agriculture. But, so that has hung over, because FDR was using that, um, but look, the tariffs didn't prevent the Great Depression, and they didn't cause it. As simple as that. And what Trump has done is 10% is a legitimate tariff. When you're talking about putting 20%, 30%, whatever, that is political. That's the forced negotiation. All right. It's not realistic. And so all these people freaking out, it's crazy. But the press, one of our readers, I thought, put it very well. He said, if Camilla had won and this happened, they would be blaming the Republicans and the capitalists for trying to make her look bad,
Right.
Which is exactly what they're doing. I mean, you have Bloomberg coming out and saying, oh, the NASDAQ's in a bear market and the S&P is soon to follow. It didn't even take out the uptrend line. I mean, what is this? The fake news is going all the way into financial now. I mean, it's crazy. But they have, they created the crash, got everybody scared to hell. Our computer had projected actually April 7th for the target for the low, well in advance. And we had said, look, there's going to be a short-term correction, then it will turn back up. It was just time. That's all. It's like, I've said before, you can raise your hand in the air, no problem, but keep it there. Eventually it gets very tired and it falls back down. I mean, that's what markets do. All right. They run out of energy. I've said before, I was in Tokyo, and this one guy bribed to get into one of our institutional sessions. He apologized. And he said, I just had to talk to you. I said, what was so urgent? He had bought $50 million the very day of the high of the Japanese stock market. But what I found interesting was it was the first time he ever entered the market. And I asked him, why did you do this? And he said, for 7 years, brokers had called him and said the Nikkei goes up every 5% every January. And he watched it, and they were correct. So he tried it December 1989. And so when you have suckered in the very last possible guy to buy, you're running out of energy. That's your arm standing straight in the air, and you can't keep it up anymore. Who's going to buy? Everybody's long. All right. That's what creates the crash. Because anybody that's been a serious trader, you get into these incidents and everybody's trying to sell. And you call the broker, where's the bid? There's no bid. All right, that's when it goes down 1,000 points. Because everybody's scared. As you know, I got called into the Brady Commission. I mean, they were starting the same stuff with the 87 crash. Oh, we're going to find the guy that shorted this market. I said, do you realize that every investigation since 1907 began with those words and nobody's ever been found? I said, don't you understand what makes a market go down? Everybody's long. They try to sell and there's no bid. It'd be nice if you had an account and you tried to trade once, But so look, these tariffs were, in all honesty, what I actually did hear was this was the press basically trying to create a coup against Trump. They've tried Signalgate, everything under the sun. And so they thought if they can really blast this out of the water, his supporters will abandon him. I guess Republicans will convert and say, yes, I'm sorry, I should have been a Democrat or something. I don't know. But they just exaggerated everything. I mean, from Bloomberg to say that NASDAQ is in a bear market and you didn't even take out the uptrend line. Come on. I mean, every technical analyst, they wouldn't even consider that unless that happens. it just it is. Look, it's fake news in finance. That's basically it. It's not just climate change and politics. They're using the financial markets to try and create political change.
What do you make? What do you make of the bond market crashing? Not crashing, but getting sold off as well in the process too. Because one of the big talking points, at least behind dissent, is to bring down the 10-year. And with conventional thinking, it's often the case that when you see a correcting stock market, you start to get some bids on the bond market. But that was not the case this time around. Why was it different this time around? And also, you also notice that when Trump did enact that 90-day pause, it didn't really seem to affect the bond market at all that much, almost as if to say that the tariffs weren't really having an impact positively or negatively on the market. So what's your take on all of that?
Largely because you also have another whole scenario about, the debt, defaults, things of this nature. Is there gold in the vault? All this stuff. So you've had a lot of Europeans told to get out of the United States. The U.S. economy is going to collapse, all this stuff. So they were selling treasuries. And because I got a couple of calls and I said, this is what's going on. Do you really think this is the right move? I said, no, not really. But I said, the real risk is the European market. People don't understand, but as you know, they called on me when they were creating the euro. And I said, okay, fine. This is how we do it. You want to create a currency that's going to compete with the dollar. You need to consolidate the national debts. That's what Hamilton did when we created the United States. They took all the debts from the states and put it and made it the federal debt. And that's when Herman Kohl basically admitted before he died that he acted like a dictator and that he knew that if he allowed the German people to vote, he would have lost 7-3. So he took basically Germany into the euro without the German people having a right to vote. Consequently, he's the one that knew that the debt issue would be something with them, that they'd be against. So he insisted no consolidation of the debt. Now, it's very simple. I told him, if you do this, the euro is going to be in trouble because, and will never compete with the dollar. If I've got $100 billion to invest, I can pick up the phone and buy treasuries, no problem. I can't do that in Europe. I still have to make the same decision. Do I want Germany? Do I want France? Do I want Italy? Nothing changed. It just moved from the forex markets to the bond markets. And this is what's tearing Europe apart. If you look at all the spreads now between the various different bond markets, you'll see what I'm talking about, and one country is now paying higher rates than another. That was all promised that would all vanish. So the risk here, when you're looking at Europe all promoting war at this stage, you don't really want any European debt. And what will happen here, why the U.S. market, particularly the Dow, will make new highs, is because when that war beating, the drums over there gets louder and louder and louder, the capital is going to come here. It's got no other choice. Particularly big money. All right. You can park it in the United States. You can't, park that kind of money in Canada or Mexico. They don't have the big markets. And so the Dow will make new highs. And all of this, downside, it's just been all exaggerated by the media and for political purposes. You know, they didn't get a lot of play out of Signal Gate, so now they're they, oh, you're going to lose your house, your 401k, etc. So the bonds, the rates have basically will probably go much higher in Europe once people realize this is it. Even in Poland, a lot of our clients there, many people suspect the elections were rigged to get, Tusk in, and he said all, males have to report for military training. And, he wants to build the Polish army up to 500,000. So, I mean, this is when people begin to realize that Europe needs war, because otherwise you're going to see sovereign defaults. And back in 2010, when Greece went down, what happened? Capital said, oh, great, we made a lot of money on that short. Who's next? Oh, Spain, and then it goes from one to the other. And, I recommend reading Herbert Hoover's memoirs, 1931, when we had all the sovereign defaults. He said the same thing. He said capital acted like a loose cannon on the deck of a ship in the middle of a tempest, shooting off in every which direction. We couldn't figure out where it was going. That's a very good description of what happened in 2010. So what happens now? One European country, it doesn't matter which one, gets in trouble. Italy, Spain, Greece, whatever. Mm-hmm. All right. It turns into a contagion that's going to hit all of Europe. All right.
Will it hit outside of Europe as well? Would it be a contagion?
No, it will be seen as a European problem, more or less like 2010. And the capital will come here. It's got no other choice.
And that goes into the Dow Jones, doesn't it?
It goes into the Dow. As long as Trump keeps us out of war, then it would also go into the treasuries. Otherwise, it's going to go more into the private sector, shares, corporate debt, and even real estate. I mean, I'm in Florida. I still get 3 calls a week at least. You want to sell your house? No thanks. Where am I going to go? Chicago? No, thank you. California, that would be even better. It's so you see it. And as I've said before, I talked to local real estate agents, and they said houses that are 1 to 5 million, people are just paying cash. So they're just parking money.
You're looking for great deals on gold and silver, coins and bars from a company that you can trust, then you've got to check out the good folks over at Pimbex. This year, I've really gotten to know these guys, and all I can say is you're not going to deal with a better group of people. They're a family-owned gold and silver online bullion company offering the essentials and more at industry-leading prices while always providing first-class top-tier service. That's PIMBEX.com. And if you're looking to convert some or all of your retirement account into real gold and silver, give Pimbex a call. They'll help explain the process and get you started on the right path. Your support at Pimbex also helps support the channel. So reach out to Pimbex today. You won't be disappointed. And make sure to tell them Danny sent you. Doesn't this incentivize? I mean, I'm going to think a bit Machiavellian on this one. But if I were Trump or the United States in general, wouldn't I be incentivized to collapse Europe in that case and just get all that capital to invest in treasuries and bring down yields that way? Like, could that be a strategy?
I don't think he really thinks that way. And I don't know how you would actually pull that off. It would take an awful lot of money to attack one particular country, I suppose. If you read Hoover's 1931, Germany was in trouble in meeting reparation payments and all this stuff, and so the French basically there was a proposal to merge Germany and Austria together for economic reasons, and the French opposed it. They started shorting the Austrian bonds. When Germany tried to help Austria, they turned around and started shorting basically the German bonds. When the Brits tried basically to help them, they turned and started shorting Britain. And it turned out to be a complete war in the financial markets. That's what created the sovereign defaults of 1931. It was countries shorting other countries' bond markets. So, I mean, I don't see that yet. I just see that they are. Look, I've known many heads of state, sat down, had drinks with them, went to, even Maggie Thatcher's house for Christmas. I don't know one leader in Europe that I'd even want to sit down, shake hands, and have a drink with. I mean, they're all terrible. I don't know. You're going to meet them. I think you better hold up a silver cross, Keep back.
What are the chances that we do see a major war in Europe? You are seeing this talk about conscription and rearming Europe, and they're talking about this in terms of 5 to 10 year time frames. If you're the Russians, are you just going to sit back for 5 to 10 years and wait for your enemy to load up, or are they kind of goading the Russians to do something here?
Yeah, no, they want Putin to attack anything in NATO. He has called up another 160,000 troops to be conscripted. I mean, he understands this is now a war for NATO versus Russia. China
NATO with the U.S. or without the U.S.?
Without the U.S. I mean, I am talking to people in D.C. I'm doing my best to keep us the hell out of it. But China is already hinting that if this is going to be a NATO versus Russia thing, they're joining Russia. And they would be fools if they didn't, because these people, if they took down Russia, then the next would be China. So, I mean, come on. I mean, look, what I've actually heard from very good high-level sources, they think that they're claiming that, Russia's weak. Ukraine's done a great job in reducing them. A former NATO general just came out and said he thinks that the number of dead Russians has been greatly exaggerated. They want it to appear that Russia's weak. We can walk in. You had Kinzinger, who was the Republican on the January 6th thing with Cheney, come out and said, we can take Russia in 3 days. So I guess 5 days for China. They act as if we can destroy them and they won't even get off a shot or something. But my sources there, Europe, you can see it with Macron. He's very, very against the United States, has always been. That's been basically the French view since de Gaulle. De Gaulle had ordered that no NATO troops were American or British could be in France. No nukes were to be allowed there. So all the nukes and everything that France has is their own. And when he ordered all American troops out, the response was, including the dead ones that are buried there. It's France. People talk about the gold in New York. France basically demanded its gold and took it out in 1971. Macron is the one who wants the tariffs. You have the EU, everybody else saying, we don't need the tariffs. We should go to zero, and they go to zero. And Macron's going, no. Why? Because this is still the old idea of France wants to lead Europe. It's I don't know, they call it the Napoleon complex, that when, the declassified documents have come out, it shows that the CIA basically created the European community. We funded it. Why? Because the CIA wanted Europe to ban altogether as a bloc against communist Russia at the time. Mm-hmm. De Gaulle was the problem. De Gaulle, finally, they had to threaten him that they would cut off all Marshall Plan aid to France unless he agreed. The compromise, he agreed to take in Germany, but not Britain. And Britain wasn't allowed to join the EU until after de Gaulle died. I mean, this is, these hatreds in Europe from one country to another go back a long time, like Greece and Turkey. This goes back to Alexander the Great, and France and England have been at wars, constantly for, hundreds of years. So when you put the train in through the tunnel underneath the channel, where did the Brits bring it to? Waterloo Station. It's always these digs back and forth. So France is what I have heard, and it is a good source. They think if they can conquer Russia, it has $75 trillion in assets. That's twice the size of the U.S. national debt. And then Europe will rise again like the Roman Empire and dominate the world. They'll be the financial capital again, and the United States will be this upstart colony. And how dare those colonists take our glory away? It's just the way it is.
That's really what he said?
Yeah, look, I've been to Paris for high-level meetings, and I've been told to bring an interpreter. Mm-hmm. And you still have to listen, because an interpreter doesn't know all the financial terms. Bull market can be translated into a meat market, Right. So I have to listen. And then when I'm correcting her, they looked at me and, oh, you know what she's saying? I said, well, I'm not a complete idiot. They dismiss her, and then the meeting takes place in English. It's just the way I think you get this attitude there that had Napoleon won, the world would be speaking French instead of English. And they just resent that all the way back. I was a keynote speaker for a conference for all the central banks, the BIS in Paris. And so I sat at the head table, and all the central banks were there, and the table started speaking English because that was the only language everybody knew. The Italian didn't know German, the German didn't know, so they all ended up speaking English. And the sponsor, who was French, sitting next to me, he was absolutely, this is Paris, should be speaking French. This is just the way it is. It's, the same attitude in Canada. Everybody has to have signs outside of Quebec in French, but Quebec doesn't have signs in English. I don't know what it is, but, this has just been an issue for a very long time.
Yeah, it's just snootiness. What do you make of the fact that Europe did place retaliatory tariffs on the United States before the big 90-day pause? And there was even talk that if they weren't able to get a deal done with the U.S., that they would be natural bedfellows with China. because if they did lose the U.S. as a key ally, wouldn't Europe be kind of attracted to becoming closer to China in that regard?
Oh yeah, I mean, look, they put a gun to their own head and shot it when they put sanctions on Russia. Energy costs have gone up. The German economy has actually shrunk by at least 3%, maybe up to 5%. Between the COVID response that they did, the climate change, and then the sanctions on Russia, I mean, how much do you want to destroy your economy? This has been the problem in Europe. Germany was supposed to, was the cornerstone of the EU economy. Mm-hmm. And they seriously hurt it. So, I mean, they will gravitate towards China, but that's not going to cut it. I mean, the Netherlands is a big exporter of agriculture, and it's just not going to cut it. I mean, it's what things have changed. All right, before they were selling, all the high-end cars, Mercedes and BMWs and stuff like that, and Europe runs on the old 18th century mercantile system that we produce things and sell it to somebody else and bring the money home. That's their economic model. We've had more of we don't do that. We've been open. This is what Trump is kind of fighting against. We are the consumer-based economy. That's what made the dollar the reserve currency. That everybody else had to sell to here. Japan had to sell its Toyotas. Germany had to sell. When you sell the product in the United States, it has to be denominated in dollars. All right, you're not going to be able to say, okay, fine, you want this BMW, that would be 2,000 euros or Deutschmark or whatever. It's got to be in dollars. Mm-hmm. So you have to understand that. And that's what made the United States the reserve currency. It's our economy. All right. China has figured this out. I mean, we have, offices in China and they are pretty damn smart. After 97, I was asked to come over and help with the central bank, and I was taken to a facility that they were monitoring absolutely everything, but they were not interfering. They were studying how everything actually worked. And so they are copying our model, trying to create a consumer-based economy, reestablishing like the Silk Road, things of this nature. Whereas Europe, as I said, they have kept the Marxist agenda of high taxes, high socialism, and high tariffs. I mean, just take champagne, for example. The French, they want nobody to be able to call something champagne unless it comes from the region of Champagne. It used to be, it meant sparkling wine. Mm. The French then tried to change it to say, no, it's not just sparkling wine. It has to be made in Champagne, in the region. We have champagne it's grown in California. Where'd it come from? From French migrants. They started it up back in the 1800s. So, I mean, this is the type of stuff that goes on with trade. They can try and deal something with China, but China, when it comes down to it, if Europe's going to be against Russia, sorry, they're joining Russia. and would be smart to do so.
Yeah. Well, what do you make of this recent encircling of Taiwan on the part of China? This happened last week. Are we getting close to this? Like this invasion of Taiwan that we've been hearing for so long now. What do you make of China's posturing there?
I think basically they would do that if Europe creates this false flag or does something against Russia. Then you just use the whole thing as a diversion. Look, it was the Biden administration that really screwed that all up. There was always this policy of one China. All right, we agreed formally that Taiwan was really part of China. As long as that existed, China didn't have to go take it. Then all of a sudden, the Biden administration, you had Nancy Pelosi going over there, independent. Now you're slapping them in the face. Anyway that knows Asian culture, once you have insulted them like that, they must respond. As long as it was just this quiet one China policy, and nobody had to do anything. You agreed they're really part of China. We didn't have to go take them. Now they do.
What do you make of Donald Trump's tariff policy on China? I'm reading now that the tariffs are now totaling 145% on China. China's retaliated by raising their tariffs on the U.S. to 84%. Mm-hmm. What's the game theory there? Is it just more escalation, or do you anticipate China coming to negotiate?
I think he's hoping that China will come to the table to negotiate.
Will they?
I think eventually, yes, but China has been preparing to isolate itself from the United States economically, mainly because of the Biden administration. You had Blinken. Look, what created all this mess was that Blinken then had the SWIFT remove Russia from the international system. And then Blinken, a complete neocon idiot, in my opinion, threatened China. If you help Russia, we'll do this to you. They have no concept of the world economy, anything. All right. Obama went to SWIFT and wanted them to remove Russia back in 2014 when they went into Crimea. And SWIFT said, no, you're not going to turn this into a political weapon. So what did they do? They replaced the head of SWIFT in 2019, and he does whatever he's told. This is what created BRICS. All right. It wasn't the dollar or gold and all this other nonsense. It was basically once you removed Russia from the SWIFT system, that was a red flag to everybody else. You either do what Washington tells you or they punish you. Mm-hmm. So they split. All right. It was actually Christine Lagarde, when she was the head of the IMF, who started this. She went to the tax havens. You're going to give us all the accounts of everybody that's there, or we're going to remove you from SWIFT. I had to give everybody up. She even threatened the Vatican, the same thing. All for taxes. She's the one that started this shit. And so now you have divided the world economy. China is developing everything it possibly can outside of the United States, so it doesn't need it. Expanding a lot in South America. That's what the Panama Canal stuff was over. Look, we set a lot of this in motion under the Biden administration. And, you know, the answer is the Roman Empire. It lasted for 1,000 years. Why? Because it was more beneficial to be part of it than on the outside. You had free trade. You can make your vases in France and sell them to somebody in Syria. All right. Free trade that way creates peace. Open the borders, open trade with Russia, then what would happen? The Russian people are making money from that. Do you think they're going to allow their leaders to start all this bullshit? They'll rise up themselves. That's the answer. Just look at history. When everybody's benefiting, there is no war. When you start, you basically, war comes when the economy goes down. Look, they put reparation payments that were outrageous on Germany. All right. They were punishing the German people. They voted for Hitler. It's completely understandable. All right. Why did he go into Poland? Most people don't even know. He didn't invade Poland just because they're Polish. They carved up Germany. Danzig was a German city. They gave it to Poland. All right. You had Germans basically stuck behind the lines there in Poland. All right. It's the same thing in Ukraine. The Donbass are all basically, ethnically, Russian. Just look at when Yugoslavia broke up. Where did the lines fall? Between ethnic differences. All right. Well, you got, Bosnia, Herzegovina, you got Serbia, they all broke up according to their ethnic groups.
Does Trump risk a chance of peace with Ukraine, at least on the part of the U.S., falling apart if they don't seal the deal anytime soon? Because, I mean, he said he was pissed, his words, not mine, the other week. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, what's the status of the Russia-U.S. peace talks there? And it seems like the Russians are taking their time. They're continuing attacks on Ukraine and so forth. So how do you see that developing?
In all honesty, if I were Putin, I would not be so inclined for a peace deal. Why? Mainly because they lied to him before. You can Google it up. They had the Minsk agreement. I couldn't believe that former Chancellor of Germany, Merkel, actually told the press when they asked how come they didn't step in to defend the Donbass in the Minsk agreement. She actually said, well, we only, negotiated that to allow Ukraine time to build an army to attack Russia. I mean, what? And then they're like, oh, well, we're not at the table. Why should you be at the table? You've publicly admitted you lied. So look at it from Putin's side. If I go into a peace agreement, is this going to be, 2.0? You're all building, you're recruiting people. You just want me to sit back while you build your army to come get us again? I mean, you got to, put on both hats. Mm-hmm. Europe has not been forthcoming. Zelensky, I think, is I talk to Ukrainians, and I've said it before. I think that, look, they even tried to assassinate him on May 7th last year. He fired his bodyguards, and he's now keeping Americans and British as bodyguards. Why? Because he doesn't trust the Ukrainian people, because they would basically, what I've been told, if he was on fire, they wouldn't urinate on him until he was dead. He promised peace. When he was elected, everybody cheered. Even Russia thought the Civil War would be over. The death toll was 13,000. Ukrainians. That was it. It's now 1.1 million. He has no regard for Ukrainian people whatsoever, doesn't care, and he is taking orders from NATO. And look, on my site, I was sent videos of him on stage before he was president. And he was like George Soros. He pretending he was not Jewish. He married a Christian girl. His children are baptized. Okay. And he's on stage, and I got the clip. It's on my site. Him joking about confiscating the assets from Jews and Russians. After he becomes president, suddenly he's Jewish. Why? Because before he was part of the neo-Nazis. And you can still see it in his hatred of all Russians. That's it. You know, I seriously doubt that he would, even honor any kind of a peace deal. I happen to agree with Putin that why should I agree when this man's term expired last year and he's denied elections? No head of state in Britain, United States, we all had elections during war. He's the only one in history, martial law, because he knows he would lose. I mean, look at the death toll. I also put on our site a video I was sent. He has been basically kidnapping young men off the street and sending them to the front line. I put on a video. One has Down syndrome, and the other soldiers are making fun of him. And they didn't even give him a gun. They told him get it from somebody when he dies. I mean, this is Ukraine. Wake the hell up. Why do you think, Hungary doesn't want to, send any money? Just look at the countries on their borders. Romania, they overthrew the election there. Why? Because they're against Ukraine. Hungary, against Ukraine. Everybody that I know, Macedonia, anybody that is bordering Ukraine, what do they tell you? If you're going to shake hands with a Ukrainian, don't count your fingers. Make sure you still have your arm. I mean, this is it. I mean, it's it should have been broken up like Yugoslavia. Simple as that. That's what the Minsk agreement was about. Let the Donbass, they're all Russians. They've been there for hundreds of years. Separate. You hate Russians anyhow. What are you fighting for? Ground. That's it. It's the Polish people just came out. A poll was taken. Ukraine should secede the land to end the war. Majority of Polish have come out and said that. Anybody that's over there that knows that region, they know very well. And these arguments are, I do podcasts in Serbia. I mean, nobody wants war with Russia. It's the EU and NATO that wants war. The people that actually there on the border have said, get the hell out of here. We don't want to get back into this nonsense.
If you had to bet $1, Martin, how do you anticipate this playing out? Do all roads lead back to war with Russia on the part of Europe?
Yes.
Most likely.
They have it's two choices. One, because they did not create the euro properly. And anytime you create a centralized government, Maggie Thatcher even came out, and I had worked with her to keep the pound out of the euro. All right. Even she came out. She says, this is a backdoor way to federalize Europe. And it's exactly what's going on. Now, just look at everything that they have done to create it. It was a lie. Oh, everybody paid the same interest rate. Didn't happen. It will be absolute unanimous vote, so no single country can be dominated by another. What did they do? Hungary didn't want to go along with giving aid to Ukraine. They just changed the rules. No longer need, we don't need a unanimous vote anymore. They lie about once you create power in a centralized government, they will always act in their own self-interest. And I don't care if you're talking about left, right, or center, or whatever you're talking about. It's always that way. Mm. Russia, Lenin wanted to create the Soviet, the communism, but based upon the United States, that each republic retained its sovereignty. He even wrote a letter, do not let Stalin succeed me. Many Russians think that Stalin poisoned him. All right. And Stalin seized control. And what did he do? Centralized power. No independence. Removed the sovereignty of all the individual republics. And, when you do that, you create this centralized power, and one size does not fit all. And I mean, look at, Camilla in the election. Somebody was there at one of her rallies talking about abortion and God, whatever. And her response was, you're at the wrong rally. It's this attitude. I get in. I don't care about your religion. Whatever you think, that's worthless to me. You're going to do what I command. That's really what she said. This is what I mean about centralized government. It always becomes dictatorial.
Do we risk seeing it from Trump's side as well?
It's mostly Trump is trying to dismantle a lot. The Democrat side got into this with socialism, and it's led them down to this crazy path where, it's wokeism and all this other kind of crazy stuff. You've gone too far. Trump is more on the libertarian side of dismantling a lot of these dictatorial things. I mean, I can tell you, I know a lot of people are upset, but, he's cutting. My mother died in 2016. They still sent her a stimulus check in 2020 for COVID. I told my sister, don't cash it. It's not just fraud. It's complete incompetence. Musk found what? People that are supposed to be 360 years old collecting Social Security. I mean, come on. I mean, I can tell you, they sent a check to my mother. You couldn't tell that she died 4 years before. I mean, she wasn't collecting the Social Security payments anymore. Can't you just put one and the other one together and figure that out? It's just total incompetence. It's government can't run a bubblegum machine. They can't. It's just, let's be honest about it. And over 2,000 years ago, Thrasymachus, in his debate with Socrates, it's recorded in Plato, he was right. He said, justice is the same, doesn't matter what form of government you're talking about. It's always the interest of those in power. And nothing's changed in over 2,000 years.
Yeah. Well, what better way to end it than on that note? Nothing changed in over 2,000 years. Martin, thank you so much for coming on, my friend. Anything else you want to talk about that we didn't get into before we sign off?
No, just, keep in mind that most of this has been scare tactics from the press. for political reasons. Our computer still says the Dow will make new highs. We're still looking at war on the horizon.
War with who? Between who?
Mostly Europe with Russia is probably where it's going to happen.
Okay.
And the Middle East is still also very contentious, still there. But Iran is afraid of a war with the United States. That I can tell you. You have pretty good sources on that one. So the main thing is that Europe thinks that they can take down Russia. NATO has been out saying that we don't need the United States. We can defeat Russia by ourselves. Macron wants to keep the tariffs on as high as possible. Again, as I said, after World War I, they put very high tariffs on to protect Europe. He's offered nuclear weapons to Germany, and he's basically telling everybody over there he will provide the shield of nuclear power, nuclear weapons. We don't need the United States. So I would expect probably more of an international war by 27, I would say.
Wow. It's not too far off.
No.
Well, all right. Well, Martin, where can people find you if they want to hear and see more?
They can go to armstrongeconomics.com. We keep it as an open source. We're not blocked anywhere from Russia to China to whatever. We don't sell advertising, and we don't. You don't have to put your email in to look at anything. So we try to keep it as completely open and free to the world.
All right. We'll have the links to that down below, so check it out, guys. If you got value out of this video, drop us a like and comment "Go, Martin, go" in the comments section if you agreed with our analysis. If you disagreed with anything, that's fine too. Let us know why, though. Drop us a comment and let me know. I do read the comments. Also, subscribe so you don't miss an episode. It really does help us in the algorithm as well. If you want to help boost the channel, hit that like and subscribe. And also check us out on Substack if you want to support us monetarily. It's at capitalcosm.substack.com. Become a paid member, get access to all of my content free, early, and ad-free, as well as uncensored for the videos that warrant it. And finally, check out our good partners over at Pimbex. It's PIMBEX.com, where you can get all of your gold and silver needs met. It's Pimbex, PIMBEX.com. All right, guys, I'll see you in the next episode.